Hello there, and welcome back to another video. This is going to be part 2 of my Starfield Through the Looking Glass series, in which we look at Starfield objectively and compare it to previous Bethesda titles when it comes to certain gameplay mechanics or features. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the armor system as a whole. And kind of compare it to previous iterations, because once again, with the last episode with this one, we're going to be kind of like looking at it somewhat negatively, at least when compared to previous iterations. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So obviously with Starfield, we got a new kind of a system in play when it came to armor and stuff, and via the spacesuits, which obviously spacesuits are a very integral part of Starfield. And when you have a sort of a, you know, like a space kind of science fiction game, you know, spacesuits are very iconic. And Starfield, obviously, you know, you need them quite a lot because of the planets and stuff. However, while spacesuits are very cool, I feel like it's a step in the wrong direction. So if we like, one of the things I always like to kind of mention when it comes to like clothing or apparel in Bethesda titles, like in Oblivion, back when Morrowind might have been different, but Oblivion kind of, for me, was kind of the peak clothing / apparel / armor kind of for role playing, because you had like, obviously with the player body, you had helmets, you had chest plates, you had gauntlets, you had greaves, you had boots, you also had shields, you had for clothing itself, you had obviously the same location, but you also had rings and necklaces. Oblivion, with the jump of Oblivion to Skyrim, Bethesda opted to merge the greaves with the chest piece. So basically, we lose a little bit of customization, but it wasn't a huge one. And then with the jump to Fallout 4, they kind of added a new system where you had, so obviously you had your kind of your clothing, but you also had like armor and under armor. So again, Fallout 4 opted to kind of expand on the system. So instead of just having, let's say, like a greaves or shoulder pieces and stuff, you had your helmet, you had your left and right shoulder pieces, you had your chest piece, you had your left and right leg piece armor. And it was quite interesting. Obviously, Fallout 4 again expanded on it and added the whole legendary system, where you get legendary piece and stuff. 76 expanded on it even more with it and stuff. Now, obviously, Fallout 4 also added the power armor system, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. Power armor system, very, very cool. Honestly, really awesome. Having this kind of suit that you hop into, and it's essentially like a vehicle or an exoskeleton that allows you to tank a lot of damage. Very, very cool. Power armor, obviously, is being a very iconic part of the Fallout franchise. Now, when it came to Starfield, the spacesuits, kind of simple in its design. It's almost akin to Halo 5, where all you have for spacesuits, you have a helmet and you have the suit itself. So it limits your kind of your creativity and your customizability when it comes to it. Now, one of the big kind of features behind it, and look, I enjoy the spacesuit system. I think it's quite cool, but I personally kind of wish that it was more akin to previous iterations. Like, spacesuits, obviously very cool, and there is different versions of spacesuits. We've got like combat suits, and we've got like exploration suits, and there is that kind of like level of what I would assume Bethesda was trying to do early on. We're having like, you'd have different kind of classifications of spacesuits. So like in Skyrim or Elder Scrolls titles, you have like light armor and heavy armor and medium armor. And then again, kind of like in Fallout, where like it's not necessarily light, medium, and heavy armor, more so it's like kind of protection based upon. I mean, there is obviously light, heavy, and medium armor. Fallout 4 adds You have like, what is it? It's like sturdy. It's just normal, sturdy, and heavy when it comes to armor. So you do essentially have that kind of light, medium, and heavy. The spacesuit system in Starfield is, like I said, it's limited, and honestly, it's quite frustrating at times because you'll be wearing a spacesuit that allows you, like, it allows you to essentially operate in the vacuum of space. Now, saying that, you can't actually operate in the vacuum of space without mods. But when it comes to planets and stuff, it's what keeps you alive on certain planets. But where it kind of tends to fall asunder a little bit is when, so certain planets will have like certain kind of negative effects, like radiation, frost, heat, stuff like that. And your spacesuit has levels of protection to it, but it's not like super protected. Like, let's say, for instance, if you're playing through the storyline, spoilers, and you're going to Ptolemy, which is a frost planet, you will get frostbite. Almost immediately of stepping off your ship, you will get frostbite, which I have to say is a weird one. Now, look, I'm not a scientist when it comes to space stuff, spacesuits, but I would assume that spacesuits are sealed and have their own environment kind of inside them to keep the person warm and cold. And to be honest with you, again, not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure space is like the coldest it is, you know, like there's nothing colder than space. Now, someone might be able to maybe disagree with me, but if a spacesuit which is designed to essentially protect you in the vacuum of space, I don't think, you know, going to brief Antarctican weather should affect you. And that's kind of where, like, it starts to, you know, it starts to falter in that in itself. Now, again, this kind of points to, again, with Starfield, a lot of, you know, some features got cut. And it does feel like the that the spacesuit system, when it came to the kind of the level of protection, it was essentially kind of not half-arsed necessarily, because I do think that Bethesda, like with some other features, I do think Bethesda intended on it to be a lot more, you know, a lot more expansive. But I think they, like with the fuel system, and they decided to cut it last minute, they probably decided to cut it too. Personally, in the game, when they added the gameplay setting, you have the option to disable environmental effects. I disable it because, again, I don't really think it's realistic if I'm walking around a spacesuit and I'm getting, like, freezer burn or stuff, or, like, I'm kind of radiation damage. Now, radiation, I suppose, you maybe, but then again, we're going to assume it's the year. We know that, like, when it comes to, I think, like, scientifically, again, I like to consider myself an amateur, I won't say amateur because that's probably even like overstating. I'm a fan of sciencey stuff, you know. I watch the occasional YouTube documentary, you know what I'm saying? No, but like, I know that, like, one of the biggest issues with, like, when you're going from, like, say, Earth to Mars is, like, the radiation. Like, once you reach, is it our like kind of orbit, like, radiation can be quite problematic. And again, I'm not 100% sure on if, I'm assuming NASA has, like, kind of figured it out and stuff, but, like, I know that, like, long-term, like, exposure in, you know, to that sort of level of radiation could be very problematic. Now, in the Starfield universe, we're going to, like, it's 300 years in the future, we're going to assume that they have kind of remedied that, because the whole point of it is these ships are basically leaving Earth and trying to go wherever they want, and they would have to be able to survive in the kind of the harshness of space. Maybe the ships themselves might be shielded, but I'm going to assume early on that it's going to be more the spacesuits are going to be advanced. So again, with the whole, like, you know, radiation stuff, I don't think that we should be taking radiation damage. Now, one thing that's interesting that I want to kind of talk about is the removal of, and again, that's kind of the whole point of these videos, the removal of the power armor system. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I initially thought that the reason Bethesda didn't add the power armor system into the game is because that Bethesda eventually wants to bring in a mech system. Mechs are a kind of a big part of the lore of Starfield, and they're used in the Colony War and stuff, and eventually they're outlawed, but you get to see them kind of scattered around everywhere. And I assumed it, and again, I'm probably assuming wrong here. I think the more we go on, the more I'm kind of realizing, yeah, probably assume wrong. But I initially assumed that Bethesda, like I said, they didn't add the power armor system because they were afraid that mod authors, if they added the power armor system, like mod authors would be able to make their own mechs and stuff. And yeah, now realistically, that's probably not the case. With where Starfield stands now, that's probably not the case. But even like looking at like the kind of the going back to the armor system itself, or the spacesuit system, I think that because spacesuits are kind of the be-all end-all, and like there are combat suits, I kind of wish that like Bethesda didn't like go full in on the whole spacesuits and stuff, because while yes, there are UC like armored UC spacesuits, but like if we like take a minute to look at like Starfield, it tries to like set itself on realism to an extent. Like, look, it's a game. It's not realistic. There's magical space powers, but it's like 300 years in the future. And when it comes to like space, like when it comes to the outfits and stuff, like spacesuits and stuff in general, they don't have like a shielding on them. Okay, so like there's no energy shielding. So like some spacesuits will be kind of up armored, and I understand that, like, like for combat in space-borne combat, so ship-to-ship combat is generally when you will see her on stations. You have, like, say, you see Marines will have, like, up-armored gear and stuff to kind of protect them. But because Bethesda went so heavy in the kind of the spacesuit system, there is clothing in the game, and there is, like, armor. Like, you see the Neon Guards wearing armor. You see the UC security wearing armor. But it's like it's only like an apparel item. It's like it's not like full blown armor necessarily, which like that in itself kind of is frustrating, because obviously I realize space, the final frontier, you're gonna want to be protected and stuff. Specifically when you come to like boarding ships, you're gonna want to be protected. And I think that the spacesuits do a decent job of like protection, but like realistically, when you're boarding and attacking an enemy spaceship, right? Like, say you're attacking it, for the most part, you're going to be thinking pirates or spacers or, whatever. A lot of the time when you're doing that, I'm going to assume that you're going to be trying to either steal the spaceship or you're going to be trying to plunder it. So you're not going to worry about, you're not going to want to destroy said spaceship. So like certain weaponry from a realism point of view, you're not going to be using. You're not going to be bringing, usually you would not be bringing explosives like grenade launchers or like heavy hitting weapons. Now in the Starfield universe, obviously in game, from a gameplay point of view, yes, you can use mines, you can use explosives, you can use all this. But like from a lore point of view, because again, with anything, games are designed to be playable first and foremost, and like the lore will sometimes take a backseat. But I would like to assume the fact that we've got like some melee weapons, like we've got the UC the UC sword and stuff in the Varun, it makes me think that from a lore point of view, if we were to be more realistic, like spaceship, like boarding action would probably take place with lower caliber weaponry or maybe energy weaponry, where the chance, or melee weapons, where the chance for accidental decompression, the explosive decompression, like shooting a hole in the ship, is going to be quite low. Now, obviously, real life, that, again, that's not the case. So because of that, also the fact that when it comes to combat and like actual combat, like if we look at all the instances of the UC and the Freestar fighting wars and stuff, and even like House Faroon, the combat always takes place usually on planets that have some sort of an atmosphere, usually. So the fact that Bethesda kind of moved away from the armor system is honestly, it's kind of a bit of a letdown, Like, I think it would have been cool if there was like an armor, like if combat in game, obviously there would be some combat that would take place in space, but when it comes to space related combat, like say if you're fighting on a planet with like, because again, I'm going to assume that like in game, obviously you can fight on many planets. Some will have atmospheres, some will not have atmospheres, and so on and so forth. But I feel like if Bethesda had have kind of, again, if they had have been a bit more specific about the spacesuit versus an armor system, you could have had like encounters where, let's say, like spaceborne encounters where you might be fighting people in zero G in space and stuff, like say for instance in the is it the Amalgast, where like enemies would be using lower caliber weaponry again, and they would be using like melee weapons and stuff. Where, like, think of the Expanse. In the Expanse, yes, spacesuits definitely exist. They definitely do, and there is armored versions of spacesuits. But you can only with armoring a spacesuit, you can only go so far before you kind of would lose maneuverability, because the whole point of like spacesuits is, one, the spacesuit is intended to protect you from the harsh vacuum of space. You know. Not entirely protect you from bullets. Now, if we look at some suits and stuff, like, again, the UC Marine armor, there is plating and stuff for the most part. But I'm going to wager that, like, again, there's no shielding. I mean, there is perks that increase the protection. But I'm going to, again, assume from a lore point of view, it's not going to be as protective as actual armor. And again, we don't see a whole lot of armor. This is one thing I would have loved to have seen, like, Bethesda, like, actually have non-space related armor. So having an armor system and then a spacesuit system that would be different. And they could have, to be honest, realistically, they could have used the power armor system as the kind of the spacesuit system, so that the spacesuit would essentially act as more of an environmental suit, you know? Like, you can obviously armor it up and stuff, but like when it comes to combat, like if you're fighting on, let's say, Aquila or New Atlantis, or like even, I'm pretty sure Ptolemy is breathable again, that they would have armors that are more armor, you know, like proper like armor. How many times can I say armor? But yeah, because again, you see like the UC security and stuff, and even like when there's a certain mission where New Atlantis gets attacked, and you see like the UC security and their armor and stuff, and they do a decent job protecting them. But like when it comes to like the UC Marines and stuff, they're kind of wearing their spacesuits, and it's kind of like, why would you opt to wear a spacesuit on a planet with an atmosphere? I would much rather have very heavily armored gear, because the other thing too is, again, spacesuits, they're environmental suits, they need to be pressurized, so you need all the joint stuff, whereas like armor systems, I mean, hell, look at a standard soldier and what a soldier looks like in real life versus an astronaut, you know. Astronaut suits, obviously very bulky. Well, actually, that depends, to be fair. EVA suits are bulky because, yeah, but like the suits that astronauts wear is like for accidental depressurization and stuff, whereas like armor, you know, armor is just protecting your vital organs, usually chest plate, some knee protection, and we do see that to an extent. Like we see with the neon security, that black kind of armor, like that's armor that looks like it would protect you from, you know, combat and stuff. It's bulky, it's protective and stuff, and again, we don't know what it's made of. Like maybe it could be very possible that, you know, that the spacesuits are made of some sort of magical material that like is a lot stronger than what we have. And look, in 200 years time in the future, we could definitely have spacesuits that are designed specifically for combat. But I just feel like I feel like, yeah, if Bethesda had have kind of went more the route of, like, you know, other games where the spacesuit was only part of the parcel when it comes to the armor system, because there's some really cool, like, clothing and items, and the thing is, realistically, you're only ever going to see your character wearing your clothing if you toggle it and you're in a settlement, right? So, like, you're either in Aquila or Neon or places like that, you know, like you don't wear it on your ship. And I kind of get it to an extent, like, you know, on your ship you should be wearing a spacesuit and stuff, but at the same time it's like ships have shielding and ships have a hull system. So, like, realistically, it's kind of like in the Expanse, right? In the Expanse, when combat's about to happen in the Expanse, they will remove the oxygen from they depressurize the whole ship, and the whole point of that is so that bullets can go through the ship without, boom, you know, exploding it. And in the same vein, I could 100%, like, it's like, okay, we're on our ship. we're about to enter combat, everyone put on your spacesuits. Or even like, the thing is, even an instance of like, you know, like let's say you're like a crew of space truckers and you're delivering some stuff from like Neon to New Atlantis, right? And you get attacked. You will have enough time with that shielding to actually, you know, to put on a spacesuit. So the spacesuit's kind of being always on. It's, yeah, and I get it. Like, the spacesuit is so iconic. It's like Starfield is trying to do with the spacesuit what Fallout did with power armor, and like what kind of Halo does with the Mark 6, or well, depending on the game, the Mjolnir power armor. You know, the Master Chief armor. So like I do understand it, but yeah, it just, I feel like once again, like Bethesda, they missed the bar in my opinion. I think that if they had have balanced it a little bit better and made it more akin to kind of a previous iteration where spacesuits weren't the be-all end-all, because like again, you could have had very interesting encounters where like where when you're fighting on planets that like actually have an atmosphere, you would have like suits, you know, like that's kind of the whole point of like having like, you have like different divisions of the UC, you know, you have the UC Marines, and yeah, okay, the UC Marines usually Marines are deployed, I believe Marines are usually used in real world, they're usually used around water and beach boarding action sort of thing. So the Marines in Starfield could be equipped with space stuff, but we also know there's the UC Army, so it'd be cool if the UC Army like didn't really possess spacesuits, they possessed it like an actual body armor system, and they were deployed on planets that were you know, planets that had habitability, because like realistically, right, if a major conflict was going to happen in Starfield, it would happen on one of the planets. Like if Varun was to attack, they'd attack New Atlantis. You would need spacesuits because it's breathable. There will be probably some instances where like you'll be attacking places that aren't breathable. And again, in that case, spacesuits, and you know, you've got the combat spacesuits and stuff. But yeah, let me know what you guys think when it comes to the system. Like, do you like the spacesuit system? Would you prefer if kind of Bethesda had it went back to their older system, like where, you know, you've got multiple options and stuff? And my question is, what is your character rocking?